Hi there and welcome to the fifth video in this little series in which I'm going to look at how to produce a multivariable graph using a pivot table. I'm going to be using pretty much the same data set as I used for the last video, video 4. I have made one or two very minor changes to it but nothing much, and I've also got my codebook open for reference a little bit later. So what are we going to do today? Well, as we noted in the last video, this data is typical of the sort of data that you would receive or get as an output from a questionnaire. And what I'm going to look at here is question 2, gender, and question 3, confidence with using Excel. And what I want to look at specifically is how confident the different genders are, so how confident males are versus females in using Excel. And I'm going to use a pivot table to help me. And this is really where pivot tables start to come into their own, because it would be quite complex to actually produce this using COUNTIF formulas and so on and so forth. So just the same as last time, what we're going to do to produce the pivot table is first of all select all of the data by clicking on the little triangle top left between A and 1, which highlights all of the data. We then go to the Insert tab and choose Pivot Table, which brings up the dialog box. And again, we've already collected the data, and I'm going to choose a new worksheet, as very often you'll find that a lot of the space will be filled up with other data. So I personally always prefer to start a pivot table on a new worksheet. So I'm going to click on OK, and again it's opened it in a new tab down here. So I'm not going to bother naming them, but it's always good practice to name them. So here we've got our pivot table, here we've got the pivot table fields, and as I say, what we want is we want to find out the numbers relating to the different genders and their confidence with Excel. So I'm going to create the rows first with gender, and I'm literally just going to drag gender down into the rows column and drop it in there. And you can see what it's done is it's created 3 rows, 1, 2 and 3, which of course relate to the different data in that particular column relating to gender. So my codebook tells me that question 2 rather, 1 equals male, 2 equals female, 3 is declined to answer. Next I want to start putting the information in about confidence using Excel, so I'm going to drag that down into the columns, which puts some titles here, 1, 2 and 3 at the head of each of the columns. Column 1, we can tell from our codebook, is for those that are confident. Column 2 is for neither confident or unconfident, and column 3 is for unconfident. And then I'm going to drag that down so we've actually got some data in there into the values box bottom right, like so. Now again, if you think back to last time, it's given us this sum of Q3, which is not really what we want. What we want is the count. So we right click on the little arrow down in the bottom right, click on the value field settings and click on the count and click on OK. And that has basically produced a matrix for us over here, which shows us that for males who are confident there are 7. For females, which is number 2, there are also 7. So we can quite easily produce a graph from that simply by copying this data out. We don't need the end column there, the totals, into a separate part of the spreadsheet, as I did last week. Gives us a little bit of space to room. As before, the dialog box for the pivot table has disappeared. We can get it back simply by clicking over here on the pivot table itself. So there's our data, and what we actually need to do now is actually start to make that actually meaningful. So if you remember, this first column here relates to these row labels, which is our gender, and the codebook tells us this is why it's always handy to have the codebook close to hand. Male is 1, female is 2, and 3 is declined to answer. So I'm literally just going to type them in, and you can imagine that if you had quite a few different answers, it would be probably easier just to copy and paste them, and maybe even help you remember what they are. So male, female, declined, and then we need to just check what the 1s and the 2s and the 3s are over here. So if we look back at the codebook, it's confident, neither confident or unconfident, and unconfident. So just going to type in confident, and no, that's not quite right. Confident. I'm going to type in neither, in the next column, and then I'm going to type in unconfident here. Okay, now you'll notice there's a number missing from this cell here, which is 0. There weren't any people that fell into that particular category, so I'm just going to type a 0 in there. Probably be quite rare, although it will happen occasionally. And that basically is all you need to produce the graph. So you just highlight, as before, the data that you want. You go into insert, and then you choose your recommended charts, and then you just basically decide which particular chart actually conveys the information that you want. Now, there are different charts here. For example, this one compares directly males and females. This one shows males and females clustered together. Well, I want to compare, I want to see if there's any difference between males and females. So I am actually going to choose that one there, that first one, that clustered column, and I'm going to click on OK, and there is my chart. Now, as before, there's no chart title in here, so I'm just going to highlight that, and I'm going to change it. What am I going to call it? I'm going to call this confidence by gender. And then what I'm going to do, we've got a nice little key down here, male, female. I think what I'll do is I'll add a vertical axis titles, by changing that one to number of students. But I don't really want this one because I've already got quite a bit of information down here, so I'm just going to click on that, and then I'm going to click on it like that so that all 4 corners come up, and then I'm just going to press the delete button. Notice that this one stays, but I lose the axis here. Do I like that particular chart? Well, it's up to you. You choose what you want. Sometimes you want to change it, sometimes you're not. I'm going to choose that one this time. I believe that one will be just fine, and I want to keep all of the data, so I'm not going to remove any of the data. And it really is as simple as that. Or is it? Well, if you look at it, there is actually a little bit of a problem here, because when you look at it, is it really representing the true position? Yes, we've got 7 males who are confident using Excel, and we've got 7 females. But when you actually think about it, how many females have we got compared to males? We've got 15 females and 10 males. So does it really represent a true picture? Does it really put across what we want to know? So have a think about that before the next video, because I will address that in the next video, video number 6. But in the meantime, before you get that, have a go at practicing this using the blank spreadsheet or the starting spreadsheet that I will put in the relevant folder for you. Thank you very much. Talk to you again soon.